So I just want to take a moment to say thank you again to everyone for being here, but also thank you to our organizers on the Food Policy Council. Hannah Schultz is our events coordinator and chair. Keisha Fields is going to be speaking today about equity and the theme of the event. Jill Irvin also serves on our marketing committee. Cassidy has been working as the intern for the Johnson County as a local food intern. And of course, our fearless leader, Ilsa DeWald, who is behind the scenes making everything work right now and has done a ton of work to make sure that this event is running smoothly today. Thank you also to our guest speakers for joining us and to all of the farmers that are working hard in the field, nourishing us every day. The Johnson County Board of Supervisors especially want to say thank you for your support in local food and for helping us advise and give recommendations as a council so that we can continue to grow the local food movement and support the whole food system in Johnson County. So our current Board of Supervisor liaison is Rod Sullivan. He was unable to join us today, so we are going to hear a few remarks from our past liaison, Pat Hayden.
Thanks, Giselle, and good morning, everyone. The Johnson County Board of Supervisors believe in supporting a community-based food system that is equitable, vibrant, and sustainable. In 2012, the supervisors created the Johnson County Food Policy Council, one of the first county councils in the state to advise on food and agriculture-related issues. The supervisors have supported the council in gathering input from our community members through annual public forums, like today, and meetings. Being connected with the on-the-ground stories helps us as elected officials to better understand the impacts of policies and programs that affect our community food system. In 2018, the Board of Supervisors adopted a Johnson County comprehensive plan that emphasizes the importance of local food and agriculture in our community, including strategic goals to support small farming operations, encourage agritourism, and become a leader in sustainable food system infrastructure. There is still much work to do and many, many stories to share as we come together to make a more equitable and accessible community food system. I am eager to listen to the stories today and welcome discussion and dialogue on ideas to move our community forward. And again, it's a pleasure being here, and thank you all.
All right, thank you so much, Pat. Thank you for being here. So we're going to share just a little more about the Food Policy Council, and then we're going to have Keisha talk a little bit more about our theme, why building a new table. Then we're going to hear from our guest speakers today, and after that, we'll have time for some Q&A before we break out into our pop-out room. So this will be a great opportunity to engage with other people in the community around what we've heard from our guest speakers and generate new ideas together. Then we'll come back at 11:40 for a little bit of discussion and group report out. And then we do have an exit survey that we really hope that you are able to fill out electronically. We'll get into how to do that before the meeting is over. So thank you to our timekeeper and our vice chair of the Food Policy Council, Molly Schindler. If we start running over time, she will help keep us on track. Okay, so the Food Policy Council vision is we envision a food system that's financially, socially, and environmentally sustainable. So really, we're looking at things from a systems level and seeing how all of those are interconnected. So we really cover quite a broad spectrum of topics and talk about a lot of different niches and parts of the food system. So we currently are revising our vision and we're working on a strategic plan. So if you have a vision or ideas that you would want to share, you are welcome to join us. So the Food Policy Council is here in Johnson County to improve dialogue and discussion. So similar to what we're doing here today. and also to advise the Board of Supervisors and provide advice on food and agricultural issues to other folks in the community. So just a brief timeline of how we got here. There was a task force of citizens in 2008 from Johnson and Lynn counties that got together and were talking about food systems issues. And then the Board of Supervisors created the Johnson County Food Policy Council in 2012. So we are almost 10 years old. The first public forum was in 2014. And a huge part of what propels our local food system along and provides support to the different actors, from farmers to consumers and business owners, nonprofits, is having a staff member who's full-time to work on these issues. So in 2015, there was the first local foods coordinator, and we have Ilsa DeWald in that role, supporting our work every day. And as Pat mentioned, the Johnson County Comprehensive Plan in 2018 had pieces of local food woven into it. And then a good portion of the last couple of years on the council, we've been talking about the UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance, which we'll hear more about from our guest speakers. So the council is comprised of 15 volunteer members who you will meet in the breakout rooms. And we try to have representation from all different parts of the food system. So from farmers to people working in distribution, to people who are working in retail, waste stream eaters, which we all are. And we're currently seeking applications. So if you're interested in joining our council, please let us know. So currently our leadership team is myself, Giselle Bruskowitz, the chair, Molly Schindler is our vice chair, Hannah Schultz, outreach and events coordinator, Will Kapp is our secretary, Christy is our past chair, and we have a bunch of volunteer members who are here. So if you're here, please give a wave, let people know that you're a member of the council. So this is our 7th annual forum. And usually we're able to meet together in person, share a meal together, and hear about different topics that are present around the food system. In 2019, we talked about specialty crop producers and had a panel of farmers who are growing a diversity of specialty crops. Last year, we talked about land access and beyond, and we're talking about the county poor farm. So if you have ideas of things that you would like to learn more about and talk more about, please let us know. And we also engage in community conversations. So aside from the forum, we table at the farmers market and the Johnson County Fair. So please keep an eye out and come say hi to us there. And just to give you, for those who are less familiar with the work of the council, just want to give you a snapshot of some of the recommendations and topics that we cover, have covered, can cover, currently do talk about. So that includes anything from talking about a shared use commissary kitchen, which Iowa City has one, 1105 project, so people can use that shared kitchen, to talking about the Johnson County Historic Poor Farm, to an issue that's very near and dear to my heart, the food hub in Johnson County. So the recommendations have resulted in funding support or policy action, and we really do cover a wide range of topics. So 2020 and beyond. As a council right now, we've been working really hard on building relationships with groups and people in the community, listening and learning from the work that's happening on the ground. And so we have working groups that volunteer time outside of meetings to build those relationships. And we've been focusing a lot on discussions around food justice and equity. So we take time out of every meeting to dive into these topics and try to build a culture around normalizing conversations around food justice and equity. So today is another opportunity to do that together in community. Ilsa, do you want to go to the next slide? And so the name of the event was Why Build a New Table? equity in the food system. So why are we talking about building a new table? I'm going to turn it over to Keisha Fields to talk a little bit more about this.
Hello, my name is Keisha Fields. I am the Inclusion and Equity Specialist at the county, and I am also part of the Food Policy Council. I've been part of the council for a couple of years now, and when I question, like, what is this table? I'm like, is it a physical table? Is it a figurative table? Like, what is this table? So I want to have, I want to get some insight from you, the public. Have you been invited to the table before? Have you heard about this table? Have you heard about, bringing new people to the table or having a seat at the table? Have you heard those things before? Can I get a show of hands if you heard those things before? I see Giselle because she's spotlighted. Okay, I see a couple of hands. Okay, all right. I'll give you the short answer to this question. Why build a new table? Because the old table's broke. The old table's broke. It has splinters. I'm getting injured by it. And that's a short version because the old table is broke and we need to build a new one. Can we go to the next slide? Okay. So, why would we build a new table? Well, first off, the old table, it wasn't inclusive enough. Well, people were invited to the table, but they weren't heard at the table. How many people experienced that, being invited to the table, but no one wants to hear your voice? Show of hands. I've experienced that. I also think it makes me think about, when we have family gatherings and you were always put at that table in the back, and then you try to work your way up to the adult table. And then when you finally get to the adult table, they give you the chair that's raggedy. And then whenever you want to voice your opinion, they're like, shut up, you can't talk yet. I think about that. And I'm like, when will I be heard? When can I suggest macaroni and cheese instead of mashed potatoes? So I think about the old table like that. But I do have, so an equitable food system is just a new standard. It's a new standard that sets the tone that this is an inclusive table. This is a diverse table, free from barriers, so that anyone can fully participate. I'll repeat that: fully participate, prosper, and benefit. That's so hard to look at because we see that, there's people who have disadvantages and advantages, and they can't reap the full benefits of being in an equitable food system because right now that doesn't exist, or we're working on it. So I have two poll questions for you. So have you been to an event, meeting, or gathering and felt like you didn't belong? Let me bring it up. So we have yes, no, maybe. So we can get you to fill that out. Have you been, it could be this event. I've been to the first Food Policy Council meeting, that forum that I was at. I felt like I didn't belong, but because I was so new to it, that's why I felt like I didn't belong. I was like, what is this about? I am completely removed from the food system and being entered into this world where I know nothing. I'm like, do I belong here? But luckily, the Food Policy Council has just embraced me and educated me more and more and more about the food system. So I'm happy to feel like I belong now. All right. I'm waiting for a couple more responses. There's a lot of people have said yes. Okay. I'll end this poll. So 79% of people said they've been to an event, meeting, or gathering and felt like you didn't belong. Wow. Can you express in the chat or come off mute and tell me like that experience? I will point to people that I know. Molly, did you say yes?
Oh, absolutely.
Can you think about that experience? Can you recall that and how you felt?
Sure. it isn't one single experience, but if I zoom in and think to a specific time when I was at a conference, I think I was one of maybe the only female in the room, and maybe it was a more conventional crowd, and I farm a little more unconventionally, use some sustainable practices that aren't so conventional. And I just felt really out of place. And like my voice, I just didn't know where my perspective and my voice fit. And it was just like, I don't know, a sick to my stomach, like really uncomfortable feeling.
Thank you for sharing. So think about Molly's experience of just like uncomfortability. For me, I felt invisible. I felt like I just, didn't belong in certain spaces. And being in a space where you feel like you belong, what happens when you're in a space where you feel like you belong? Anyone want to respond in chat or unmute themselves?
I mean, I don't know. Like I'm sometimes I feel like I belong in a space and I'm being heard and that I'm visible, but sometimes I feel like there's been like not like on like things that I've shared, I feel like there hasn't been enough action taken to really be a fully inclusive community. Inclusion and diversity, I mean, sort of mean different things to different people. So it's just like, I feel like, yeah, I mean, I do feel like sometimes I am being heard, but like the suggestions or things that are input that I share isn't really extending over to into actions and into doing things that are based on like that have, what do you call it? Like, like for example, someone suggests, why don't we hire more women? And they give the reasons, and the person you listen to are saying, yeah, we should totally hire more women, but then over time, you don't really see any actions taking place. So that's
Thank you for sharing. And that's why building a new table is so important, because that old table, great ideas, but they're stuck in their ways. They're stuck in their old standards. Like, this is how we've always been doing this, and we do invite people to the table, but we don't hear their voices. We don't really embrace their ideas. So building that new table is like, I know it's starting out from scratch, but we do have history that we can learn from. And we say that we're not going to repeat what history has done, because we know we're fully aware of it and we know what we need to do to change. So that's why, we're building a new table, figuratively building a new table. We can't possibly build a new table if we got some construction people, I don't know what to call them, but if you're a builder, I don't know where we're going to put that table, but we'll put it in the next picture or something. We'll put it somewhere. But figuratively building a new table so that everyone has a seat at the table, everyone is heard, everyone can participate, prosper, and benefit at this table.
Thank you so much, Keisha. And Keisha is the Johnson County Inclusion and Equity Specialist, and we are really lucky to have you on the council and to help us think about how we can center this in all of the work that we do. And beautiful point, Ariane, about it's not just about listening, but it's also about taking action. So I'm hoping that as we listen to our guest speakers, that can help inform our actions into the future. So we are really lucky to have 4 incredible guests today. So Hai Huynh works as the Community Projects Coordinator for the Coralville Community Pantry and is a Coralville City Council member. In her job at the pantry, she coordinates hot meal programming and provides food assistance for Coralville residents. I was elected to the Coralville City Council in a special election in October of 2020. And her goals on the council include prioritizing development that puts people first, improving community mobility, and addressing racial and economic justice, as well as tackling climate change, which we've been hearing a lot about in the news this week. So in addition to her roles, she's also an active community volunteer and just a genuine pleasure to talk with. So I'm so happy to have you with us today. Hi. From Black Diamond Halal Meats, we are very excited to welcome livestock farmers and meat producers El Sadiq and Babakir, who are here with us to share their journey that they've undertook to begin Black Halal Diamond Meats. Now, we also have Ed Williams here with us, who came and spoke at one of our monthly meetings. So that's something that we're continuing to do through this forum, but also monthly to hear from community members and educate ourselves as a council about issues and hear stories from the community about what's happening in local agriculture and food systems. So they are going to discuss halal meats and what they've been able to do to partner with the county in order to process their goats and other animals in the way that is properly prepared in line with religious criteria, and also how to go about doing that in Johnson County, which was part of that UDO conversation we mentioned earlier. So really excited. We're going to take the next half hour to hear from our guests, and then there'll be time for questions and answers. So as you're listening, if you want to jot down questions on a piece of paper or enter them in the chat, would definitely encourage you to do that. We'll have time for Q&A after they both speak. Excellent. So one other note, and Ilse, if you want to jump in about which speaker should go first, but we do have a translator with us today for our guests from Black Diamond Halal Meats. So there will be time to translate built into their sharing their story. So without further ado, why don't we start with hi?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to the local Food Policy Council for creating this space for us all to have an important conversation surrounding, local food justice and inequity in our food system. Thank you, Giselle, for a beautiful introduction. My name is Hai Hun, and I am an immigrant. I am a longtime Corvo resident. I am a mom to 4 beautiful children, and I work as a community project coordinator at the Corvo Food Pantry. I love to eat, I love to cook, and I love to invite people to our space to share story. Food has always been important to me. It's my way of building community, sharing culture, and engaging with friends and strangers. As strange as that sounds, I really like to, invite just really anyone to come to my home and share a piece of my culture through the food that we often take the time out, lovingly prepare. And having said that, I love doing that, but there is a stigma that is around food from agriculture here in the U.S. and also right here in our local community. When it comes to food from agriculture, it's often being viewed as other, like it's smelly, it's dirty, it's food that that nobody wants to eat. And I have personally experienced that, and let me tell you, it's not a pleasant experience. When I was in college, and I packed lunch to eat, and this is the food that my people have eaten for thousands of years. We grow up, we eat it this way. This is how we eat, and we have never think otherwise. And so I packed lunch to school, I heat it up, and as soon as that microwave beep and I took my food out, everybody just left the room. They physically left the room, and they also whispered to one another, "Oh, what is she? Oh, what's she eating? Why does it smell so bad?" And back then I wasn't as as vocal as I was now, so I just quietly closed the lid to my lunch and tuck it away and not eat for the day. Yeah, and then the other time I packed some sardine, and sardine, American people have eaten sardine for hundreds of years, and sardine is it's back then is like a staple, and so I thought, oh, sardine, everybody knows sardine. As soon as I opened my lunch container, one of my fellow students looked into my lunch and said, "Ew, why would you eat fish? Like, ew." And it was just, I was angry, but I didn't know how to deal with that. And so for the longest time, I would not pack lunch to school. I would just go, hungry, and I would come home and I eat, because that was just the easiest way to deal with bully then. And just recently, my kid would pack lunch to school too. And again, would just pack the food that we eat every day. And, they experience something similar. People would make really snide comment when it comes to their food. And it's just sad. And so I teach my kids to not pay attention to that. And I want them to not behave like me and not eat their lunch and stay hungry. And it's weird because, the food that we have eaten for thousands of years have always been acceptable in our community. But in other community, it is devalued. It is devalued. And a lot of other underrepresented population here in our community can experience that, have experienced that. And when that food, that exact same food that is devalued, was prepared by white chef, especially by white male chef, it's then deemed acceptable, and it can garner big money. We see it here locally. And it's okay to draw inspiration. All of us should draw inspiration from somewhere. But it's a respectful thing to pay homage to its roots, where you draw your inspiration from, and really do the research and give it the correct name, instead of just slap on a name because that is the name that associated with that food, and completely destroys that food, and add in one element and call it what it originally was. That is very disrespectful. And I think here locally, I would hope that the local food policy could help change that culture, could help change that narrative. Asian culinary tradition have been co-opted and appropriated for so long. It's starting with food that grow for thousands of years, and then all of a sudden, a white person discovered it and put a name on it, and then that food became something else. Our history is completely erased because someone decided to put another name on the food that we have grow and eat for generation. And again, just like I said before, it is okay to draw inspiration, but it's a respectful thing to do, to pay homage to where you draw, to its origin, where you draw the inspiration from. A while back, I was really, really upset when the bastardization of the banh mi came about. Now, banh mi is a Vietnamese sandwich, and it's a sandwich, but it's not like any other sandwiches. It's a sandwich that is very Vietnamese. It has very specific element to make up that sandwich. And the whole point of banh mi is bun is bread, and mì is wheat. So bánh mì is wheat bread. And then we have chefs out there that literally take the name bánh mì and slap it on a bowl of rice with pickled radishes and carrot and call it a deconstruction bánh mì. And that is not okay. That is not okay. And I really hope that, from this conversation and future conversation, when we talk about food appropriation, people really listen, and people really listen to the people who have the authority to talk about that particular food. And, food it's me. Food is my tradition, but food should not define me or my culture. And I run into this a lot, and I'm sure that a lot of people from other culture have run into this too. So if I meet someone for the first time and we do the introduction, and they always say, "Oh, where are you from?" Or "Where you are originally from?" And I would say, "Oh, I'm originally from Vietnam." And the minute that I said that I'm from Vietnam or I'm Vietnamese, then I became a bowl of pho. So I no longer hi, or I no longer, because I'm Vietnamese, now I'm a bowl of pho, because pho is a beef noodle soup. It's known widely. It's known worldwide right now, and it is Vietnamese. It's very much Vietnamese, but everybody talk about it. And if you say that you're Vietnamese, all of a sudden they go, "I love pho," and then you became pho. So I really want people to stop, think about that, what they want to say. If they really want to elevate that food from that culture, say it in the most tactful way so that you don't reduce that entire culture to one dish. My work at the Corvo Food Pantry allow me to creating space, where we can honor and showcase the authentic cultural tradition and the people who have made that food possible here in our community. And we're doing that by having a global community dinner. And we are hoping through our global community dinner, we can bring in the community and give them a chance to experience food from all the cultural, start conversations so that we can talk about, all of our food and not just a particular food that is deemed normal and acceptable in our community. All food should be normalized and acceptable in our community. It doesn't matter where it's come from, because food is us, food is our culture. And once you decide to not like the food, then that is the minute that you decide that we don't matter. We don't have a space at the table that you built. No matter how big of a chair we get to sit at that table, if you don't listen to our voice, then there's no point for us to have that seat at that table. And then we also want to provide support, for those who are underrepresented and overlooked in our food economy by creating, again, space, to normalize all of these talk about different cultural food, to hopefully garner fund so that we can support them to kickstart their business in order to introduce the community to the food that they eat. And I am really thankful, for this opportunity. And thank you for, having me here. And I'm looking forward to listen and learn, and hopefully answer some question and share more story. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing your story. I have so many thoughts and questions, and I'm really excited to continue the discussion. And thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing it as well. That takes a lot of courage. So before we begin the question and answer or our breakout groups, we are going to take some time and hear from our guests at Black Diamond Halal Meats.
I'll begin. My name's Ed Williams. I am not, our farm hosts Black Diamond Halal meats. And I grew up in a heritage farm. I was a 5th generation traditional farmer, corn, soybean farmer for 30 years with my family. So listening to this discussion about building a new table, this whole process was certainly, we built a new table, and it was a very rewarding experience. My background was, as I said, I did farm for 30 years. I met these gentlemen a couple of years ago. And yesterday, in preparing my remarks and outline for what I would talk about in the process that we went through to go through the almost 1-year process of developing Black Diamond Halal meats on our family farm, their business on our farm. So I was looking over the outline this morning, and it's really boring. The process was very, very boring, very involved, very detailed. But so I kind of scrapped that whole outline. But in general, I just wanted to say it was a very rewarding process. What I found most encouraging was that everyone encouraged us, everyone supported us. I had to deal with state, local, county, the Iowa DNR, meat and poultry inspection, but everyone was so supportive of what we were doing and wanted to encourage us to proceed and get this on the ground. So it was and what I've gotten out of it is to learn a new culture, to learn about new foods, to see that community developing in our county, and just to see the process of changing. I'm pretty much a lifelong Johnson County resident. I've always loved what it entails and what it involves. So it was rewarding to me to see this evolution of new diverse communities coming to Johnson County and growing and producing food. So that was my beginning, and I would just turn it over to Bobby Karen and Sadiq because it's their business, their baby. They've developed it. It's been the evolution of where their building is. It was built as the 1950s corn crib on our farm that was built to hold ear corn. And then when I was a child, it was converted to hold shelled corn. And then over the years, we would put corn in it. And then even it spent 5 or 6 years as a pellet and corn stove sales room, retail store, showroom, when I was involved in that little sideline. So it's been a 70-year-old building that's had a life of 5 or 6 different applications. It's on the heritage farm that's on the farm that I grew up on. So that's what I would have to say. And I enjoy listening to what Bobby Karen and Sadiq, their background and how they came to be, their story. We're still learning much about each other and their background and how they came to be here. But I'd like to listen to them now and look forward to any questions you might have in the future, because I still have many questions of my own, and there are obstacles that I'm sure they can share with you and we can share with you later. Thank you. Sadiq, go.
My name is El Sadiq Ahmad. I came to United States immigrant 2005 from my journey start in United States in Des Moines. I've been in Des Moines. I work in Pyramidos Casino, and just wanna more work. I recommend myself to move to Alaska. I moved to Alaska, and I work fishing for 7 years. And I've been in Alaska, just my second home. And I moved back after my job is done in the Alaska, Washington State, and I bring my family there from Sudan, and I just want to go back to my first home, Iowa, and come to Iowa City 2014. And the reason I came to Iowa, I know Iowa is good place to raise my family and good place for education. And just want to start my life from Iowa City. I go to Kirkwood and study for 2 years, but always thinking wanna work. And I see Iowa is good place to start work because I know I study before I come to United States, I know Iowa and Illinois place for the agriculture. And I look on place for to do like farming, and just I go around and I meet my friend and told me you can find something and help me make art, and I do some vegetable. And later on, I meet my friend Babikir too, and just want to think I can do something because Iowa here, I see like more than 5,000 Sudanese here, and I know my people culture eat like lamb. And if I want to go to a store, I don't never get fresh meat. Only I know it's coming from the Canada or Australia, and that one maybe for a years in the freezer. I try to go to, if like want to go to local meat in river, just need appointment to do that. Just wanna maybe I can easy way I can do something and maybe help our community, and all my community recommend us you can do, I can help for that of kind of things, and start to do that one. And really it's the people who told us if you want to do something special like by license, I can help. And really Art is good person, help us a lot, and Elisa too, and people from the state, I think, help us a lot for kind of that job. And just now want to start and see, go my journey, and maybe want to see in the future more things I can do. And really think about the vegetable too. I know if you go into Walmart, I see a lot of the things coming is not from Iowa. It's different state. And I know Iowa is short season, but can do it between June and October. You can do something, but it's still a lot of things coming from outside the state. That chance to come people, and just I don't like to more people bring food from the Australia or Canada. Just local is best always. And thank you.
One thing I should have clarified at the beginning, Black Diamond Halal Meats has a custom exempt facility license from the state. That was the specificity of the license that they have. So Johnson County had to amend their newly adopted ordinance, and they were very helpful in that and approval to get this accepted. A custom exempt facility is a facility that the meat's not for retail sale. What happens is a family or individual will come onto the site, onto the farm, pick out a live animal or bring their own animal if they wish, but they will pick out a lamb or goat that's there. And then these men will process it in the halal method. And at the end, the individual leaves with the whole meat from that whole animal marked not for sale. So it's a very specific way of retail to one individual, but he's buying the animal. So it was something I was really entirely unaware of before. But again, the state, as I said, they were very encouraging. They said, we need more of these around the state. And I actually think the pandemic was good timing for what we wanted to do here because of the awareness of the consumer, the situation with traditional meat lockers of suddenly being booked up for a year, if not longer. So the custom exempt facility is something I wasn't aware of. It's unlike anything else. It's not like going to the store and picking out your cuts of meat. So that's what they're involved in, and it's by appointment. It's not a busy operation, but it's nice. I've always said it's nice to have livestock on the farm. I don't have to take care of them. These men take care of the livestock, and I get to enjoy seeing them.
My name is Babikir Muhammad. I come in migrant United States, 2005 in the Richmond, Virginia. My county in the Hanaraiko. I come in together in my family, my wife. And now I have 5 kids. But I moving in the, I working in the Tyson food. Like 4 years, and I working in the restaurant 4 years, and I have experience like 6 years experience for food. I have business, me and my brother in the Virginia restaurant. His name Defensi. We have a restaurant 25%. For food, but now my brother, he's working in the Virginia in my place. We make Italian food like pizza and sandwich and spaghetti and all food like kind 25 sandwich. My reason I come in the EWA, I come in 2015. I listen in the good place in the kids, good saving in the people. I come in, my kids starting in the middle school. And now my kids go in the high school and middle school and elementary. But my wife, he go in the school, working like he study nursing. But me, I working sometimes detailing car. And my friend, we started a business for festival and meat halal. But I know Ewa City, he took my brain before me. We see meat is coming in the Australia in different states. We talk, we trying, we make business for fresh meat. We trying, we go in the county in the James River for meat, for local meat. We find it out. We have very help and another people for state. And now we need extra help for we grow this business. Maybe state, I pay maybe more, and state too is help me and everything, and we need help We need to go grow, etc., etc. Thank you.
I've said that they have big American entrepreneurial dreams that I'm having a hard time saying, let's just take one step at a time, but it's encouraging and I'm going to do everything I can to assist them. But we appreciate all the help we've gotten up to this point. And I've told many people that for a long time, I thought I was helping them and teaching them, but in the process, I've grown and I've learned so much, and they've taught me a lot also. So it's been a very rewarding relationship, I think, for all involved.
Excellent. Well, thank you to all three of you for sharing your story and talking about how you've been able to grow this business. I like the call at the end to make some changes in order to be able to keep on growing your business. So let's open this up to the group. Now, of course, we're in a Zoom, so question and answer, we're going to just navigate this together. There's no perfect way to do it. But I think a couple ways that would help is you can raise your hand like we practiced at the beginning with that reaction bar, and then we can kind of call on folks one-on-one, or you can type a question in the chat, or you can type in the chat that you want to ask a question. So any of those methods. And I am going to go to gallery view so that I can see people raising their hands. Okay, Molly, you want to start us off?
Absolutely. I am still, thank you to all of the guests for sharing your stories. I was super moved throughout both presentations. My first question that I have a question for each, but I'll start with hi and then take a moment to formulate my other question. Our current table is rooted in white supremacy and the genocide of Native people. And as Keisha mentioned, our current table is broken, and that's so true. And I would add to that our food system, our table, was intentionally built to be broken. It's no accident. As a Food Policy Council member, I'm wondering how our work as a county council can lead and support city level officials like yourself, hi, as a city council, Coralville City Council member, how our council work can lead and support city level officials like yourself toward the goal of uprooting white supremacy in our food system.
Thank you for the question, Molly. I have to say I'm fairly new, on the council, so I'm still learning what I can do and cannot do, and what I can facilitate and cannot facilitate. But I would say that I think starting the conversation is the first important step, because that conversation needs to be started in order for us to have a direction to go toward, right? And we know that our table is broken. We know that the old table was built on white supremacy and suppression. So how do we change that? If we were to go in a new direction, should we start a new direction that giving everybody a fair chance at the table? Or do we still want to center in, on a certain population that is deemed normal and acceptable? So I think for city elected official and also county too, I think if we want to start that conversation, we need to look at how do we support such, business in our community. Okay, I think the struggle for a lot of underrepresented and underprivileged people is that they don't know where to start. They don't know where to start. There is so many barriers out there. And the first barrier is language barrier. And once language barrier is the major thing, it's cause you, it it doesn't give you a lot of time to do other things. When you're trying to navigate, okay, where's my next step? How do I get this application in? Once you get the application in, it's not even just one application after another. And then you have to get the translation. And as we all know, those kind of applications are lengthy and the language are very hard to understand. And so for people who are not native speaker, that's just a huge hurdle to go through. And even after they get through that hurdle, they run into financial, like funding issue. And without funding, they can't kickstart, their dream. And so I think as elected official, we need to create a space and also a fund where we focus on helping those folks to kickstart their dreams.
Thank you so much for the question, Molly, and thank you, Hai. Next, we have Ruba, who I believe is calling in from a phone.
Yes, hi. Hi, everybody. Well, my question is for the Black Diamond Halal. Actually, I'm new to the country. I'm new to Iowa City. So once I came, I found that there's differences between like states. When I was in California before, I could find the halal meat even in Costco and Walmart. But here, the availability of the halal meat is only restricted to the Mediterranean shops or Arabic food shops, which will be like triple the price. So it's not like, it cannot be afforded by everybody. So this is an issue that it has to be like supported and encouraged to be more available everywhere, that anybody can buy it with the average cost.
Thank you, Ruba. Yeah, does anyone want to respond from Black Diamond and just sort of add to that differences across states? I know, Al-Sadiq, you mentioned you had been in Alaska for a while, and also just this issue of markets and accessibility and it being triple the cost and having a hard time finding the local halal meat here in Iowa that's that a lot of people are looking for. So does anyone want to respond to that from Black Diamond?
Yes, because the reason is why I want to think do that kind of business. I know it's Iowa have like mostly people here eat is beef and pork and maybe some goat, but the sheep is very hard to find in the store in Costco or Walmart or any kind of store. And another things too, why a lot of like, in general, like Muslim people mostly eat like 80% eat lamb. It's not eat like cow or eating, but it's 80% eat lamb. And that one, because why want to doing that kind of business. And another thing is why from our business, that one is not available. The license not available to take to Walmart or any kind of store. Only person come directly to place and choose and do for him. That I don't have kind of license to do in the store.
I know recently within the last year, I asked Sadiq, I said, well, where is this meat now? Because I've seen it advertised in the Mediterranean stores, as she mentioned. And he said, Chicago. And so I'm not, that really encouraged me to do more here in this local food movement, because that just seems something that shouldn't continue to be. So we're shipping in meat from a fair distance as it is. And I wasn't aware of the cost, and I wasn't aware, I raised lambs when I was in 4-H, but I'm not a lamb eater. Maybe that is why, I don't know. But I wasn't aware of the price of lamb here now until I started paying attention after meeting these men. And when you see the price of lamb is higher than a choice cut of beef, it was really amazing to me. So that's another reason we proceeded with this little project.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. Ariane, oh, sorry. Did someone have something to add?
Just want to add more things because maybe people in Iowa City not thinking about halal meat or like especially for the lamb. I know I've been here in Iowa City 2005. Maybe the population for them Muslim maybe around maybe is 1,000, but right now changed more than 6,000 right now it's here because why just that on the reason people before not focus, but now maybe it's need more.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to add on to that, I think like that demographic change is happening and there's some data out about 2040. And I think even in Iowa, there's going to be a lot more people who are wanting halal meat. And that was, Ruba, thank you for bringing up that point because that was new to me. I did not realize that it was 3 times as expensive and difficult to find. And our guest also mentioned Australia and Canada. Just to clarify, is that where most of the halal meat is coming into Iowa currently?
Yes, people is bring from the Chicago, but that meat mostly coming from the Canada and Australia is like freezing meat. Yes.
Right, okay, thank you. Yeah, so it seems like there's a good market for this and there's people who want to do it. Ariane, do you want to add on to the conversation?
Can I ask how there was someone who made a comment about language barriers? I'm sorry, how do you pronounce your name? Is it Hai or? Okay, so just make sure I pronounce it correctly. Like one comment I wanted to make, it kind of made me think that, like, for example, talking about language barrier, but there's also communication barriers, especially like for people with disabilities. It's sometimes really challenging to be able to like communicating things effectively, especially if you're someone who grew up masking certain types of things, like, you know, like for example, being closeted about disability. So sometimes, oftentimes there might be a communication barrier too, that oftentimes prevents certain conversations from being had. So I just wanted to add that on to another previous question. And if someone wants to add on to that, that'd be fine. Sorry.
Yeah, Hai, do you have anything to add, I guess, just in terms of, I think you do a lot of work around access and thinking about the different needs of people in the community, whether that be a language barrier or people who are differently abled, you know, like how do you address some of that in your work, either at the pantry or on the council?
Yeah, those are the things actually we kind of deal with every day at the pantry. And now, just like I mentioned before, I am fairly new on the council, so I don't know how the council run before or how do they deal with this issue before, or whether this issue is even, you know, even recognized at council level. So what I try to do is that, you know, we try to create an inclusive place. And so we try to not place judgment on people because of the way that they look. You know, we try to let that person drive the conversation. So if they have a barrier, we, you know, we let them tell us. And if they can't tell us, then we try to ask question in a way that is not demeaning or offensive. And so that, you know, we open up the conversation so it feels comfortable for them to communicate their needs to us. And someone said earlier that I think is Ariane, is that how you say your name, Ariane?
Ariane, yeah.
Okay, Ariane. Ariane said earlier about action. You know, we can talk about inclusivity and equity and all of these things. But if we don't take action, then really we are not going anywhere. I think the table will remain broken if we don't take action.
Well put.
I'm not
Thank you
sure if I should say this personally, but when referring to disabilities, it's becoming a lot more common for people with disabilities to refer to themselves as disabled, as opposed to differently abled. I think it's like something that's coming in, like the language. So it's preferable, I think, oftentimes to say disabled, because I think it's like one of those identity things. Because right now, like differently abled, and like sometimes like it's like when you're learning more about a conversation and identity conversations, it's kind of tricky to know what word or terminology to use. Like, you know, as a white person, do I say people of color? Do I say Black people? Do I say African Americans? And it's kind of similar to referring to people with disabilities. Like, now, do we say disabled? I'm not sure, because I've been doing some research about this, and still I make mistakes too. Like, make mistakes about this because like a lot of like ableism has been really internalized among our culture, and it's very normalized. Mm-hmm. So I think saying disabled, or I don't know, people with disabilities, it's oftentimes better than saying differently abled or what's.
Thank you for bringing this to the attention, Ariane, because language is really important, and it's a super important part of this conversation. And
I think,
and I'm here as a learner as well, and so I appreciate that you feel comfortable sharing that in this space. So I will adjust. So is it disabled people who are disabled people? How?
You'd have to look it up, because I'm still trying to figure out, like, autistics now, people on the spectrum are now preferring to be called autistic as opposed to Asperger's, because some of the history with the person for whom Asperger's was named after, there's some connection between him and Nazism. I'm not quite sure exactly what the connection is 100%, but yeah, it's there's something kind of euphemistic, like people sometimes, like, what do you call it? Like, there's like a euphemism. People want to say differently abled, or what is it? But like, I think for a lot of people with disabilities, it sometimes sounds kind of patronizing. So just like learning how to like check our language, because it's really challenging, especially if you're learning something new. It's like, well, what do I want to be sensitive, but how do I refer, like, what terminology do I use to, like, what, like, language? Like, it's another one of those things that's part of language barriers, like communication barriers. Like, how do I speak about certain people, and or you know, certain groups of people, or how do I, like, what do I say?
Definitely. So, and I appreciate you know, taking the time out to help us be better. I think that a lot of that stuff does happen in conversation. So that's why I'm happy we have so many people here, and people from diverse backgrounds who can help us all do better and be as respectful as possible.
Check out I don't know if you heard of Sia. She made this movie called Music, and like a lot of people, there was a huge backlash against it. So some videos talk about, like,
Ariane, can I make a suggestion? Because I think what you're talking about is so important, and that you are much more knowledgeable. You're an expert on this in the room. Like, you're the expert in the room. Would you be willing to, if you have some good links, put those in the chat for everyone, and we'd be able to explore this. If you can think of something throughout the rest.
I don't know exactly what the good links are. Like, I find articles all the time, and I'm not quite sure which. I don't have like a list.
No worries. If you think of some good resources throughout the rest of the program, if you could put those in the chat for us, so that we can get to the remainder of the questions in the group discussion. Yeah. But I would love to keep this conversation going in the chat. I think that it's really important, and that you should have the platform to share your expertise and knowledge. And this is part of the conversation for sure.
Thank you for keeping us on track, both Ariane and timekeeper Molly. I think we have time for one more question before we move into our small group breakout sessions where we can continue to dialogue in a little bit smaller space so everybody can have a chance to talk there as well. Joe, do you have a question?
Hi there. Kind of jumping off what Hai said earlier, taking action and making movement forward instead of just having the conversations. And this is a question for everyone. But taking that action in Johnson County and creating halal meats, I know how difficult that was to get that started. And there's a lot of barriers. What were one of the things that like kept that from happening in the first place that you had to navigate, just so we know how difficult it was?
Yeah, I think Ed, you mentioned you didn't want to go step by step into the process, but if you could maybe talk about one barrier that you experienced when trying to start Black Diamond Halal Meats and how you were able to overcome that.
Let's start at the beginning, I suppose, with having and I don't want to make this sound like it was terribly difficult, but I've been following the Unified Development Ordinance over the years, and I know the difficulty that involved in coming to conclusions, so that when I was first, after contacting supervisors, I knew that's kind of when I was put in touch with Ilsa as a guide through this process. So she's been invaluable in that. But when I heard that the ordinance would have to be amended, I felt out of place. I thought, oh my gosh, they spent so much time getting this done. But Nathan Mueller at PDS was very helpful and kind of guided me along that. But I would suppose, and I didn't have to do that much. Staff took care of it. They discussed with me what we were looking to do. The state consulted with the staff of county to explain the situation to them. So the county was really wonderful in going through that process of getting the 2 or 3 paragraphs in the amended ordinance that would enable this operation to happen. So that was probably it. And just, again, a big barrier. It was a process, but that's one thing I love about Johnson County, even though I may complain about it. It's been a special place to me. And I think everyone involved in supervision and officials are what make it so special. So amending the ordinance was the first step. And from there, it just kind of was step by step, week by week, with the help and guidance from a lot of people. But bringing together, the first thing what we did was find letters of support. So I got a letter from Bob, the director of the Sudanese Community Center, the regional director of Iowa Meat and Poultry Inspection Bureau, wrote a letter of support. And at one point, I happened to know of Tom Banta of ICAD, Area Development Group. And so I was looking for a way to really catch people's attention. And I emailed him and I said, doggone, I think this is about economic development in our county. Because that's one thing that the traditional people perk their ears up and says, oh yeah. And he totally agreed. He said when they try and recruit businesses and industry, they try and show what a diverse community we have, what a diverse workforce is available. So he was very supportive in his letter of recommendation. So finding the support in the public, nothing was that difficult. It just took some time and to go through the process.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Ed. One last quick question in the chat box before we move into our small groups. To purchase Black Halal Diamond meat or Black Diamond Halal meat, I believe you mentioned you have to actually come to the farm and select the goat and then sort of take it off farm. Is that how it works? Or if someone in this group wanted to purchase meat from you, how would they go about doing that?
Just first things is really I don't have like a lot of customer, just on call. Somebody if need something, just make call and just make appointment. What time is good for me or for him? and come in and just show the lamb and tell him the price, and just I can just start doing that kind of job.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So yeah, it's something that happens on the property. They can sort of process animals on property, but it's not something that I believe can be sold in the grocery store due to some of these policy things that we're talking about. So Ilse, do you want to pull up the slide for the breakout groups? And before we move on, Molly, did you have any closing thoughts?
Oh, I did have a few closing thoughts. As I look at the wonderful relationship between landowner and farmer that has been able to be formed via Black Diamond Halal Meats, I'm reminded that 99.5% of farmers in Iowa are white, and 99.9% of farmland in our state has a white owner. And these demographics illuminate inequities in our food and farm systems. The broader population of Iowa is just under 92% white. So those who own farmland and farm in Iowa are not representative of our broader population. And I guess I would just encourage us to envision a future where our land and our farmers reflect the diversity, the entire diversity of our state's population. And I think partnerships like the one that is illustrated with Black Diamond Halal Meat between landowners and fifth generation farm owners, when they can use their resources and privileges to open up spaces for those in our community. I think that's just a great example.
Thank you for sharing that, Molly. And so you should see a breakout group poll pop up on your screen right now. And so before we hop out into breakout groups, I just want you to know every breakout group will have a facilitator from the Food Policy Council and a note taker as well. So to go through that, Black Diamond Halal Meats, the facilitator is Joe, the note taker is Cassidy. For the Food Policy Council suggestion box, the facilitator is Will Kapp and the note taker is Debbie Klein. For High's group, the facilitator is Keisha and note taker Molly. And for the network/open group, if you just want to chat and get to know people, the facilitator is Bill and I will be taking notes. All righty. So we've got about 50% have selected. We've got these 4 groups. The first is to continue the conversation with Black Diamond Halal Meats. The second is just general Food Policy Council suggestions. The third is to talk more with High, and the networking and open group is just to get to know people in this group and have some social connection and chat about whatever might be clever. All right, we're invited. You can click join. I hope you enjoyed some good discussions. In order to help us come back as a large group, we're going to ask the note takers from the Food Policy Council from each group to share a little bit about what y'all talked about in the small groups. So why don't we start with Molly?
I want to acknowledge that our group was just hitting a stride.
Bummer. No, it's tough.
I know there's never enough time. Bree was in the middle, and that's a reminder to accept and accept non-closure. We're going to have to carry these conversations out into our lives outside of this Zoom that we're currently on. So Bree was mid-conversation, and I work with Bree, so I'm committing to finding out what she was about to say as the Zoom kicked us out of our room. We talked about a wide range of topics. We got a few questions in. We asked High how she got to where she is today. And a few of the points that I heard were learning through conversation, especially with those who are different, and relationships, 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 listening, listening, listening. That's how trust is built and knowledge is deepened. And then she also mentioned being curious, just asking questions and wanting to figure out answers and learn new things. We also talked about how to approach conversations with people who are different. And my heart smiled at some of the answers to this question, just as people offered up food is a way to bring people together. And then we started telling stories of ways that different people within the group had actually met one another through food, and that food is a way to talk about culture and traditions. Food is culture, food is traditions, and that can be celebrated and be a platform to talk about and share difference in a really positive way. And then we are just starting to talk about just general thoughts, feelings, and reflections on the few hours that we've had together. And Bree was offering up just how complicated it can be to think about how to approach conversations about food access while also holding space and acknowledging that access looks so different in our community. And an example we had was how wonderful would it be if halal meat was more affordable and accessible? Like, yes, let's get halal meat into all places, including, for instance, Walmart, but then that can bring these other things might bubble up of like, well, Walmart is exploitative to their workers in XYZ ways. Just that the questions are complicated and the solutions also feel really complicated. And that is where we left off.
There is so many more hours of conversation that we could be having for sure. So hopefully this is just the beginning of that. Let's hear from a note taker. Debbie, do you want to tell us what you guys talked about in the Food Policy Council suggestion box breakout group?
Well, we had a very, very small group. Will, myself, and one other person. But what was nice is we kept the conversation going, and we could have kept on going. One of the things we talked about was preserving culture in food. It's a dynamic thing, and it's hard to know what is right and wrong on where you're taking that. Want to see that, we experience all foods and have that for our community. And how do you deal with the fine lines of that? It was an example that was brought up that French people love food and they love sharing in that community effort with their food. And that's something that, should be in each of our cultures and what we experience in those cultures with food. Figures that are in the food world, such as food critics and chefs, what does it mean to decenter whiteness in that world? And if, boy, I can't read my writing. We gave an example of if Hai had a restaurant in downtown Iowa City that was geared towards the Vietnamese cuisine and foods, that it would be nice to have that community relationship for other restaurants with her. So let's say that those other restaurants or a bigger restaurant would want to put an item on their menu that would be of her culture. They could reach out to her, have that relationship built so that it is a community effort for everyone. And we also talked about understanding that food from some cultures are being stolen from them. There's a lot of diversity in Iowa City with our community, and that's just not only in food, but everything that's part of that community. And it's nice that we do have businesses where we can experience the different cultures in our food in this community. And then our last subject was talking about farmers markets and how they're organized. Will and I did not know this. I'm not sure how many other people do, but Coralville moved their farmers market from St. Morrison Park out to Iowa River Landing. We see so many barriers with that, challenges for people that may have walked to St. Morrison Park to go get local foods. And now out at Iowa River Landing, that would be, you have to drive to get out there. It's not easily accessible for those people. And maybe they don't have transportation to get themselves there. So that's something that, we as a policy council should talk to Coralville about. Why did it move out there? Why is it that we're not having the accessibility for people that may be in that geographical economic access, that we couldn't have it back at the park where we were providing a better location for people, and that was more centralized within the community. And how to get farmers markets or little markets into other locations. How do you get those organized? Sycamore Mall, for example, they used to have farmers markets once a week out in their parking lot. I'm not sure after the pandemic if that's still occurring or not, but look at those little neighborhood areas that maybe should have an organized farmers market at to make that accessibility easier for people. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So yeah, lots of ideas that we can mull over as we're creating policy recommendations and as we're continuing the conversation. So I was in the note taker for the networking group, and we talked about a couple different things. Marjorie was sharing a little bit about the Kirkwood Community Pantry and also the University of Iowa Community Pantry. And just talking about some of the differences in their models and how those two pantries get funded, and also how they serve different people in different college communities. So whether that's students or that also includes staff and faculty and others from the community. So it looks like they're doing really great work, and she's interested from this conversation and other conversations in trying to source culturally relevant foods and to try to find the right place to find those in order to serve the pantry. So hopefully Hai and Marjorie will form a connection off of this group. Francoise was also talking about the slow food movement. And I mean, I feel like one of the white elephants in this room is just how challenging this last year has been for all of us in so many different ways. But it's really hard to have a slow food movement and come together and share food over Zoom. It's possible, but it's not the same thing. And so just building off that legacy from Kurt Fries, and he passed away. He was on the board of supervisors and did a ton of work to support the local food movement here. So we talked about, I think kind of looking ahead to the slow movement in the future, and also just the idea of cooking food every day, local food every day, that it doesn't have to be this fancy nouveau French cuisine, but it can just be good quality, and that's a practice that we could all take on. And that Francoise shared that about her life, just cooking every day. It's a simple but powerful thing. So let's see, Cassidy, do you think that are you able to come off mute now?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so we started by talking about what exactly halal meat is, and learned that it's processing of animals per like the Islamic religion. So there are certain rules on how to take the animals' lives that are mandated by the Islamic religion. And then we kind of talked about how Black Diamond Halal Meats would like to see their business grow, and where they're kind of limited right now. So right now they're limited to 500 heads per year, but because the county, when they made these ordinances, wanted to start them off slowly, And they're hoping that that number could be increased, and talked about how they have one big weekend a year for their religious holiday. And if they could operate to their full capacity, they could process dozens and hundreds of goats and lambs in that weekend alone. And so there's a little bit of a concern about that 500 head limit, and would like to see that increased a bit in the future. We also talked about how the Sudanese population is growing, so that could spark more demand and more of a need to grow their business as well. And they mentioned that they would like to be able to supply to stores in town, but that would again involve some policy change and some zoning changes so that they could be in a commercial agriculture zone. And this would lead to much more inspection. Right now they have pretty minimal inspection, but changing to this commercial ag zone would just drastically increase the inspection needed. So that was the bulk of our conversation here.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Cassidy. We have 1 more minute until noon. So we're going to go back to our slideshow and just extend an invitation for you all to keep the conversation going. But thank you again for sharing your Saturday, sharing your time, sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you again to our guests for sharing your stories. It's been a pleasure. If you have any questions or comments, you can contact Ilse DeWald or myself. And we want to invite you. Our Food Policy Council meetings are on Mondays, and they're monthly, and they're open to the public. So it's easy to tune in via Zoom right now as we're meeting virtually. Our next meeting is Monday, May 17th at 6 p.m. And I would encourage you to find a link on the county website or reach out to Ilse or I. And that concludes our 7th annual Food Policy Council Forum. Thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful Saturday. It's really beautiful outside. I hope you get to go out and enjoy that.